It's your open source advocate, and I'm back with another video, and today I wanted to talk about some open source gaming. We've talked about this a little bit in the past, and I talked about it from the perspective of being able to kind of build your own games using open source game building applications that are low code or no code. And that was a lot of fun, and I've done it. I've gone through some of those tutorials. It's really, really fun for me. Now, I'm adopting a girl, and then I have a niece who stays with us and lives with us, and I have nieces who come to visit us occasionally for summer or for vacations, and they all love to play video games on their devices, and I think that's great. I have nothing against video games. I loved to play video games when I was a kid, but I didn't play them for just hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours on end. It was really kind of, you played for an hour or so, and then you went out and did other stuff, and these days I just noticed that kids always want to be on their games. So I don't know if games have gotten more enticing or more appealing in some way, but they all want to play these games that are on servers, and I just, to be honest, I find that kind of creepy. I don't like kids being able to go play on servers that I don't have control of, and I don't know who's on them, and I don't know what controls who joins them, and I don't know who's interacting with them, so it really kind of bothers me a bit. So I started looking for an opportunity to say, you know what, I can host my own game server and we can play on a local area network, or we can play over the internet, kind of however we want to do it, but at least I have some level of control over what they're doing and who they're interacting with. It's really not what they're doing as much as who they're interacting with, honestly. So I started looking for games, and one of the games that they love to play and tell me about all the time is called Roblox. And I'll always say, well, are you winning? And they'll go, what? And I guess for me, a game means that there is some goal and something that you can do to actually achieve something and win. You know, there's a point to it. And for them, they just run around doing nothing, which I'm like, you can do that in real life. I don't understand why you have to be in a video game to do it. So I started looking for games that were something like that. And I know you can run your own Roblox server if you pay them. And I said, again, why am I going to do that? That's crazy. I don't know what Roblox does. I don't know what's doing in the background. I don't know how they're controlling it. It's just an issue for me to do something like that. I'm not saying that Roblox is bad. I'm just saying I don't know what's going on with it. So I don't want to really mess with it. But I did find some other options, and I'll talk about some of those throughout different videos. They're not all going to be back to back or anything, but you know, there's Minetest. So if you're a Minecraft fan, Minetest is out there. And then I found this one called Veloren, which is really a cool looking game, and it does have some, at least, elements of goals and things you can achieve and stuff you can unlock, and you can basically set up your own server and then run the client on your side and tell it to go to your server. You can use their servers. It's kind of up to you. And I don't think it takes a lot of computing power, so we're going to set this up today and kind of run the server, and then I'll show you how to install the client. Now, I'll say this. Out of the gate, when you start looking at the client, it's very important to understand what they've got for minimum requirements. Now, I was able to get this running on a Ryzen 3. I don't know what generation chip, but I made this less than $500 box back in like 2019, 2020. I can't remember, and I used a Ryzen 3 chip, and it's got 16 gigs of RAM and a little solid state drive in it, and that's it. I don't have a GPU. I don't have a graphics card, nothing like that in it other than what's on board. And I'm able to get it to run pretty smoothly on that machine just by changing some of the settings for the graphics output in the game. Now, if you want this to run like, amazingly well on any kind of screen size and resolution and all that kind of stuff, then you're definitely going to want to get some kind of GPU or graphics acceleration going, because it does require a little bit more than you would think. It looks like a low-res game, but I don't think it's a low-res game, honestly. I think it's a game that takes up a good bit of power, and that's why they're suggesting that you have this stuff. It absolutely runs on Linux. That's my favorite part. It has some different things here, and if you have any of these things in your system today, it should run. If you have a decently new laptop, it should run. If all these things. Now, I say new. You need to look at the specs of your laptop. Depending on where you got your laptop, it could be new to you, but it may not be newer hardware. So check those things out and really check out their specs here. I think it's important for you to understand that before you go into this and then tell me, I don't want to, in the comments, I don't want to hear you say, I tried to run this on a Raspberry Pi 2 and it wouldn't run for anything. Okay, it's not going to run on a Raspberry Pi 2. I don't imagine. I would be very shocked if you got it to run really well on a Raspberry Pi. If you get it to run on a Raspberry Pi of any style, I want you to let me know though in the comments. For serious, I want to know, like, does this thing run really well on a Raspberry Pi for some reason because it's got some kind of graphics capability that I don't know about? I don't think that's going to happen, but if it does, let me know. But yeah, 4 gigs of RAM. Multi-core CPU, 2 gigabytes of free space on your disk, and then again, they say a GPU with either Vulkan, Metal, or DirectX 11.2 support. So be aware that this is kind of one of their requirements for getting this thing to run well on your client side. This is not the server, this is the client. So we'll jump over here and we'll talk about the owner's manual and what you can do for installation so that you can see that, and we'll do it right after this. I want to say thank you to all of my subscribers and all of my patrons over at Patreon. Seriously, you guys make this so worth it for me to do these videos every week. I really truly enjoy it, and I just can't say thank you enough. If you're enjoying these videos, subscribe. Let YouTube know that I'm doing a good job by subscribing to the channel. Plus, you'll get notified when I have new videos coming out. And finally, if you're enjoying what I'm doing, give it a like. Just click on that thumbs up, and that way YouTube knows that you like it, and they'll pass it along to other people that might enjoy my content as well. I really appreciate it. Thank you again. Let's get started. So the manual here is going to be super important for you. There's some good videos out there from some of the people that are playing Veloren, some of the people that are making Veloren. They just had a new release at, about 10, 15 days ago of 0.13, and it's added a bunch of stuff. So it's got some really cool features. It's really fun. It's really early. It's in development. So there's a lot of new things being added with every release that they do, which is really cool. If you're a developer, if you're interested in game development, if you're somebody who wants to help them test or help them with the documentation, they've asked for help with the wiki documentation, as a matter of fact. So it's really important that you get out there and help make the wiki better. So you can contribute in a lot of ways, but I just want you to know that there are ways that you can contribute right now to make this really great and really fun, but it's really kind of an endless world style game. And it's supposed to be like a mix between kind of Roblox and Minecraft and some other stuff just from other people's things that I've read. I have not played it a lot. I've started playing it and trying to understand it and move around in it and do things. There's some good tutorials out there to help you with that as well. But if you're a PC gamer already, this is probably going to come as second nature to you to be able to do a lot of the stuff that they do already. When we start talking about installing the server, so first thing I want to do, I want to host my own server and I want to control the server. If you look here at the documentation, it's very well broken out, and it's continuing to be built out, which is great. But if we come down here to the installation guide, there's, run your own host basically, and they tell you. You can run it on your own computer, you can run it on Docker, and you can run it on a Raspberry Pi. So if you click on Raspberry Pi, now the server side you can run on Raspberry Pi, so building the Veloren server for Raspberry Pi. So cross-compiling or not, they go through some good details about what you should be doing and how you should do this. This is not something I'm going to do today, but for the guys who are Raspberry Pi fans who like to use the Raspberry Pi, you can run the server piece off of a Raspberry Pi. So preparing the Raspberry Pi as you continue down, compiling the code, just so much stuff that you can really do, creating a systemd service. Really, it's just pretty impressive that you can do the server part on a Raspberry Pi. But today I'm going to do this on a virtual machine. We're going to use Docker because I love to use Docker. Why not? Docker for me makes running servers very easy. If you like LXC containers or LXC containers, I think that's great. You're welcome to do that. Sometimes I run those because that makes it just a little bit easier for whatever I'm running, or gives whatever I'm running a little more power maybe. But if they have a Docker capability, I'm probably going to go with that first and just see how it does. And then I can make a decision later whether I want to stick with that or whether I want to do something else. I'm going to enlarge this a little bit for the people on the mobile devices here. But they go through some pretty basic steps. And these are things that I've done, for a long time. So they've got create a folder for the server data and CD into it. Download the sample Docker compose file. It says, if needed, open port 14004 and 14005 for metrics in your firewall. Create and start the containers, run sudo docker compose up-d. Now, we don't want to use sudo. We want to add our user to the Docker group, and then we can modify the Docker compose file and do all the things that they say here. So really, not super complicated to do this. There's monitoring and maintenance. So to restart the server, they say docker compose restart. View the logs, Docker logs, and the container ID, but I like to use docker compose logs-f, and it tells the logs for the container. And then, of course, to access the server's configuration files, open the user data folder, and then you can actually just edit them right there. So running commands inside of the Docker container, so you can do this as well. So you say docker attach container ID, and there's different things that you can do within that Docker folder there. And it says if you want to shut down Graceful, so they've got a little bit of information, but really this is not super complicated to set up this server. I'm going to open up a terminal window here, and I'm going to make this font a bit larger for the folks on the mobile devices, and I'm going to SSH over to one of my test servers. I'm going to cd into my Docker folder. If you don't already have a Docker folder, you can just create both folders that you want. So you can do make the mkdir-p like Paul, and then you can say Docker and then slash, and then you're going to put in Veloren. And it's going to make both of those folders. So if you don't have the Docker folder already, it'll create it. If you do, it'll just put a Veloren folder inside of it. So it's really kind of a nice command. So we're going to cd into docker/Veloren. We're going to do an ls. There's nothing there. ls-a. It's just the normal stuff. So we're going to do, we're going to go get that Docker Compose file that they said. So we're going to go back to the wiki here. And they said just download our Docker Compose file, and you can use wget. If you don't have wget, you should install it. It's a really useful command. We're just going to highlight that command right there and copy it, and then we're going to go back to our terminal and we're going to paste it in, and we're going to do a wget. And what that does is it goes out to GitHub or GitLab and it says, hey, I want to download this file. GitLab says, okay, here you go. And now if we do an ls, we have our docker compose.yaml file. So I'm going to clear that out. We're going to do nano. This is the text editor, docker compose.yaml, and you can just start typing. So if you see me do this ever, I type a little bit to make sure I'm getting kind of where I want. You can hit tab and it'll autocomplete. If it doesn't autocomplete, so I'll do this. Let me do touch docker my dot text and touch docker yours dot ini. So if you have a bunch of files in your system that all start with docker. So the cool thing about the Linux command line is you do nano docker and I start typing. If I hit tab, it's going to tab out to the point that it's like, okay, now you need to tell me what else you want. You can hit tab a second time. It's going to give you a list of all of the options that you have. And you can say, oh, okay, yeah, here's the one I want. Compose.yaml, and then tab again. I just hit C and tabbed again, and it knew what I wanted at that point because I'd narrowed down the list enough. So let me remove these files real quick. So I'm going to do rm docker-my and docker-yours. There we go. Do ls, we just got docker compose again. I was just showing you that so you understand the tab command there a little bit. So we're going to do nano docker compose.yaml. We're going to look at this YAML file. So I'm again going to make this just a little bit bigger. All right, so we've got version 3.5 is the Docker Compose version that it's going to use. So it's going to start up a service called Game Server, and it's going to use the image that they've got here, which is server CLI nightly. So it's going to use the nightly, which is great. You get all the updates and you can kind of run things and get it up to date. On the standard in open, it's going to say true. It's going to have a TTY set up, so it's going to be true. Don't worry about those things. Container name, it's going to give it Veloren Game Server Master. So this could be a master and other servers that you're running that are clustered, I believe, but for now it's going to run Game Server Master. The ports, so it's going to map these two ports to the two ports on the host. So this is your host, and this is your ports inside of your container. So on the left side, if you need to change one of these ports, if these ports are for some reason already in use on your host machine, on your host server, you'll want to change the left side here to be a port that's not in use, and then let that be mapped to this port on the container. Don't change the right side. The container expects these ports to be used, but you can change the left side to any open ports on your host machine. Just remember what you changed them to. That's important. Restart on failure 0. So I think that means don't restart on failure for some reason. We'll just leave it for now. We can always go back and change that if we want to. Volumes. So we're going to create this volume called /userdata, which means in the folder we're in, the / means from the folder I'm currently in, which is docker/Veloren. Create a new folder called userdata and map that to the containers folder that's /opt/userdata. Again, you can change this left side if you don't like this name or you want to change it to something else. Just don't change the right side. It's very important that the container knows where this is. On the environment variables, run the log. Debug, so you want to be in debug mode, that's great. Common, and then it says net equals info, that's fine. I don't think we need to change anything for this stuff. Now right here, they are setting up Watchtower for this container. So Watchtower, if you haven't seen my video on it, is basically a system that's created to automatically update your Docker containers. If you don't want this to auto update, it's important that you basically comment out this entire section, and you would start at the first letter of each line and put a hashtag. So you would do this hashtag at the hyphen hashtag, because YAML is space specific. It doesn't want to see a hashtag in the wrong place on any of these lines or it's going to freak out. So now we've hashtagged out, basically commented out the Watchtower section, and Watchtower will not run. It won't keep this up to date on its own. You'll have to keep it up to date, which means you'll have to go in and do docker compose pull and then docker compose up-d to recreate and restart the server with the updated data. If you don't want to do that, because this is nightly, Watchtower will check every day and it will update that for you every day. Now, that could mean that you come in and you try to play your game one day and it doesn't work. That's a chance you're kind of taking, so just understand that. I'm going to do Control O. That's going to save my work, and I'm going to check and make sure the file name right here is correct, and I'm going to hit Enter to confirm. So I've got everything set. I don't believe I want to change anything here. It looks good to me, so I'm just going to say Control X to exit from the Nano editor. I'm going to clear this out, and we're going to do docker-compose up-d. Now, this will start your container, and it will start it as daemon in the background so that you can exit the server and it continues to run, all that kind of stuff. But if you want to see the logs once it starts, you can do space, 2 ampersands. Let me get the right characters there. And then docker compose logs-f. So this runs 2 commands, one after the other. First, this one that says bring it up and start it as a daemon. You can just run this by itself if you don't want to see the logs. And then the second command is once that's done, run this command which says show me the logs and let me see the logs as they're running. So I'm going to just hit enter. It's going to go grab that thing. It's going to bring down the Veloren server. It's going to grab Watchtower. It's going to start those up. They should say done here in just a second. There it is. And it's going to show us the logs as it gets everything running. So be patient because it could take just a minute to get everything up and running. It may not take any time at all. Just depends on what your server can do and how fast your internet connection is, things like that. So give it a little bit of time, but you can see here that it's bringing down these worlds. So it's going and getting information for worlds, and it's like civilization, site, economy. So it's getting a bunch of stuff. So give it a little time. It's going to take a little bit of time for this to run. If I zoom this back out, you can see better what it's actually going and grabbing and how much of it it's going and grabbing. So now it says right here, server is ready to accept connections. And then it tells you what address it's expecting that from, which it says 0.0.0.0, so it's expecting all addresses. So this is on my local network. I'm not going to be able to do this over the internet unless I do some port forwarding and things like that. But I'm going to go and I'm just going to try to open that up. So I'm going to go to 2.168.10.112. Now this doesn't run as a web server. You need a client. But I'm just going to see what happens if I go to this site. Yeah, so it's giving me some output. So I know the server is there and it's running and it's listening, so that's fine. If we go to 14.0.0.5, that one doesn't go anywhere, so it's not going to give me any feedback on that. But 14.0.0.4, you should see a little bit of something in your browser at least to know that the server is there and running. And of course, you can constantly check your logs and see that it doesn't say, hey, I just crashed or anything like that. So you can use Control C, like Charles, to get out of the logs, and the container continues to run. You can do docker compose ps, and you can see, okay, here's Veloren server CLI running, and Watchtower is running, and it's up. Both are up, and you can see what their addresses and ports are, everything like that. So we're good there. So I'm going to clear that out. Now we need the client. So I want to talk about the client real quick, and I want to say, one of the things that you have an option for that I'm not going to go through today because I haven't done it yet, but you can run your own authentication server. You do have to have a sign-in in order to start playing the game. Now, the Veloren team runs an authentication server that you can use. So what you do is you go over to the Veloren site and you create an account. That is your authentication account. If you're going to use your own authentication server, you can do that, but you need to set up your authentication server and then you need to tell the game how to authenticate against your own server. So just be aware of that. You do have to create an account with them, but then that authentication lets you get into your server, lets you get into their server, lets you get into other servers. So you can add multiple servers. If you start one, your friend starts one, your brother starts one, your aunt starts one, you all can have your own servers and you all can cross-play on each other's servers. And you can add those servers just by sharing them and sharing the URL to them and stuff like that. So I think that's pretty cool. And you can use one login for all those things if you're all using the same authentication server. So be aware of that. I don't want that to be something you get surprised by whenever you go to get this. We're going to jump back over to the download Veloren. And we're going to go down here now. Airshipper, I want to talk about this. So you can definitely get the Veloren game on its own. And you can get that as a flat pack. You can get that as all kinds of things. What I like is this thing. This is Airshipper, and it basically is like an installer package for Veloren. So what you want to actually do, in my opinion, is go get Airshipper and install it. This is Windows, this is Mac, this is Linux, it doesn't matter. And then use that to get Veloren, and it gets you the up-to-date version. It says, hey, there's a new version, you need to pull that down and update it. So the way you can do that, there's different ways. So here's Airshipper for Windows. I'm just going to open this in a new tab. And it's going to download it. So you see right there, it pulled down this Windows MSI. So you would run that MSI to run it as a Windows option. Same thing here. If you go Mac OS, it's going to get you a PKG. It's a tar file. It's a zip file. But when you download it to Mac, the Mac will automatically unzip it, and it'll be a PKG file, I believe. Then you got Airshipper for Linux. Now down here, you can see they've got it for FlatHub. So if you're a Linux user that likes Flatpak, you've got that option. They also have it as a PPA if you want to use the PPA for Ubuntu. It's unofficial, but there is an option if you want to do a PPA. If you're an Arch user, they've got the Arch user repository version for Airshipper, and you can get Veloren directly if you want to use that, but I still suggest Airshipper. So Copper for RPM-based distributions if you want to get one for an RPM-based distribution, and they have the Snap. So they have lots of different ways to get this thing for different distros, which is really super great. So just understand that there's a lot of different ways to get this if you want to get it. So I use the FlatHub way just because I know how to kind of do FlatHub, but figure out what your best way is to get the client and get it installed. It's one of these kind of standard ways: Snap, Flatpak, PPA, AUR, or Copper. I've never used Copper, so I'm not real super sure about that one, but they give you the DNF install commands and everything you need to do to get that done. So if you're a Red Hat, CentOS can probably use that. So there's lots of ways to do this, okay? All right, first thing I have to do, because I want to use FlatHub, I have to install Flatpak. So I'm on a Debian-based distribution. I'm on Kubuntu 2204, so I'm going to do sudo apt install. It's funny that you have to use apt to install another package manager. But we'll get it, Flatpak-Y, and it's going to prompt me for my super user password. Alright, so we've installed Flatpak. Now we're going to try to install the actual system, but they give you the command right here. So you can just highlight the command, copy it, and we're going to paste it in here. So whenever you first install FlatHub or Flatpak, sometimes you get this little message right here that says no remote references found, similar to FlatHub. So that tells you, okay, I installed Flatpak, but it doesn't set up any kind of repositories for me, and that's fine. We can go grab a command that lets us set up that repository. So we're going to use this command right here, and it's flatpak remote-add, -- if not exists. So basically see if it exists, FlatHub, and then we're going to put in the URL for FlatHub, and it's going to go out and say repo flathub.flatpak repo, and we're just going to hit enter. Put in your super user password. Now it says Flatpak may not appear on your desktop until the system is restarted. So a session is restarted, so you have to log out and log back in to get that to work. We're going to find out here in a minute. But we're going to try that Flatpak install command again. It's going to say, hey, do you want to do this? It's going to go get Airshipper. We're going to say yes, and it says x86-64 stable. And then it's going to say, here's all of the things that I'm about to install, and here's how big they are. Are you sure you want to do this? So this is basically telling you, here's all the repository dependencies that you're going to need. So it's kind of looking at this and going, okay, network, Flatpak, fallback X11, Pulse Audio, Wayland X11. So it just kind of says, here's all the permissions that it's asking for, and then here's all the things that it wants to do. So we're going to say yes, hit enter. So this is kind of a weird thing about FlatHub, but here it says 100%, but it still shows that it's downloading at almost 2 megabytes a second. And over here, the number is still going up, but it shows you that it's 200 megabytes, so it's obviously not done. So I'm not sure why their bar decided that was at 100, but it's kind of interesting. All right, we're going to go ahead and try to find Airshipper here. And there it is. So it's going to open up something like this, and it's going to tell you, hey, here's all of the latest releases, including 0.13, which was not too long ago. And we're going to do an update. And you see here it turns into a play button once it's ready. Now, on the machine I've got some low resources. This is an old laptop with an i7 in it, but it's got to be at least 6 or 7 years old at this point. So I'm going to hit play. and it's going to try to open up and hopefully not freak out too much. Now, this is where I talk about that you need an account. But up here in the corner, it tells you, hey, a little bit about authentication. So it tells you that you can go create an account with them, or you can run your own authentication server. Good, it redirects us. All right, it says enter account details. Now they tell you right here, please note, we cannot reset your account if you forget your password. Make sure it's secure and write it down. This is important. Now, instead of writing it down, use something like Bitwarden or VaultWarden to save your passwords. It's very, very important that you use a password manager, because that's how you have different, really complex passwords that you don't have to remember. It remembers them for you. Just make sure you've got it backed up somewhere and that you do regular backups so you don't lose account information if anything happens. So I'm going to create one here. My username. All right, it says successfully registered. Now this doesn't go away or anything. It just lets you know, like, hey, you did it. Good job. So I'm going to go back to the game, and I'm going to put in awesome OS and my long, strong password. I tried to do this on my laptop that's pretty old, and it just was not going to do it. So what I've done is switch to a desktop that I made, like I said, a couple of years ago. And I've got on the other server that I use, I've got the settings set, but I logged into that 192.168.10.112 server, and that's the one that I'm logged into right now. So when you first log in and actually get onto that server, this is what you're kind of going to see. It's going to tell you, hey, create a character. You're in single player mode. Now you can create as many characters as you want in single player mode. Once you get done creating your character, you can hit enter world, and you're going to start getting into the world and playing. Now, inside of the world, you can do escape, I think, to get your mouse back, and then right click to get settings and things like that on the screen, and go through the menu options and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things you can do. And if you're a pretty heavy gamer, you probably know how to do this stuff already much better than I do. But you can kind of see, this is just a screenshot. This isn't where you're going to start specifically. So I'm going to create a character, and they give you all these things. You get options over here. I'm sure you guys are used to these things, but you can change how they look and what they do and everything like that. For me, this is fine out of the gate. I don't need anything special. I might switch it to the axe, and I might switch, I don't know, the face or the hair or something. Yeah, the guy looks okay. And hairstyle, you can change whatever you want for hairstyle. And then you can just say, roll the dice to get an appearance. Roll it again and get another one. So you can just kind of click the dice, and it just auto-generates what you get, which is kind of cool too. So that's good. Let's do that. And my character's name is Blobbity. How's that? And then you click on the create button here in the bottom right, and you've got your character, and now you can see enter world is enabled. So I can actually click on that, and it's going to load up the world that I want to play in. Now my mouse is currently loose, so if you want to do something before you click in, they have a tutorial. You can right click, and you see he grabs his stuff, so he swings whenever I right click and moves around. And you can use W, A, S, and D to walk once you click into the world. Alright, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of gameplay, so it'll be fairly quick. I'll try to keep this very minimal. I'm not a gamer, and I'm definitely not anybody who should be streaming gaming. But I want to show you kind of what it's like, and then I'm going to get some of my family in here with me to have a little bit of fun. And we'll all kind of play together, so you can kind of see what it's like when you're doing some of these other adventures as well. So it's nighttime, which makes it much more difficult to do anything. But I'm going to climb up as high as I can here. And one of the cool things is when you want to travel, you have some options. So you can hit control, and you get this glider, which is really kind of cool. And if you get anywhere near these campfires, it saves a waypoint for you. So you can see up there it says waypoint saved. So that just means if you do fall down and die on your way up, you'll come back to that spot, and you're not quite so far back at the beginning of where you started. Now there are things you can grab and collect, and as you get close to them, it'll tell you, like these things here, and you can press E. But you can travel a long ways really far, really fast with a glider. fireflies and things like that. I mean, this is really impressive to me that this is a open source, self-hostable game that you can just play and have fun with. I mean, excited. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, like, subscribe, tell your friends about it so they can come along on the open source journey with us, and I'll talk to you next time.